Picture this. The place is London during August in the late 1880s. You are a prostitute and have a home in the eastern end of London, more specifically, Whitechapel. An overcrowded city filled with attics, filth, and a plethora of your fellow co-workers. As you're walking home, you feel on edge that someone is watching you. This would be a strange set of circumstances, wouldn't it? However, this was a common feeling around these times due to the murders of the serial killer known as Jack the Ripper. According to a page written by the Crime Museum about Jack the Ripper in the Cold Cases section, it states, part of what fascinates the world today about the Ripper murders is the classicality of the mystery. It is an open and shut murder case, but it lacks one element: solution. He killed 5 women for apparently no reason, then disappeared, never to kill again. There are many speculations of the individual behind the murders and the motives behind them. Even after 2 centuries after these murders have taken place, people are still uncovering clues. According to a page written by Daily Mail about a new cane which has a carved face of an old man on it, states, it was presented to Mr. Aberline as a macabre leaving present by his team of 7 officers, after he was pulled from the investigation for failing to crack the case. The Whitechapel murders case, also known as the Jack the Ripper murders, is one of the most infamous cases of all time. And as I had mentioned earlier, Jack the Ripper was never caught or heard of ever again. In this speech, I'm going to cover the case of Jack the Ripper, the murders and the victims, the methods that the victims were slaughtered in, and people suspected to be the infamous serial killer. To talk about the cases themselves, we must first delve into the murders and the victims who they claimed. According to an article written by John Philip Jenkins on behalf of Britannica, states, quote, some dozen murders between 1888 and 1892 have been speculatively attributed to Jack the Ripper, but only 5 of those, all committed in 1888, were linked by police to a single murderer. The names of these women in order of the first victim to the last victim were Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. Most of these women were in the age range of mid to late 40s at the time of their demise, except for Mary Jane Kelly, who was 25. In research from Clark and Kiger, it states all were prostitutes, or were known to accept prostitutions on occasion. Most were middle-aged, and all were either drunk or known alcoholics. Now that I have covered the victims of the murders, I will now cover the methods in which Jack the Ripper murdered them. The murders committed by Jack were horrific by even today's standards. All of these women were heavily intoxicated by the time of their death. The Ripper would pay them, quotation marks, for their time, end quotation marks, which would lead to their demise. When the bodies were found, it was in terrible condition. And according to research by W.G. Eckhart, quote, all except one were strangled by, had their throats cut, and were mutilated after they were killed. The victim who was not mutilated was strangled and saved from desecration when the killer was startled and interrupted before carrying out post-mortem mutilation, end quote. The only incongruency with the killings was with Mary Jane Kelly. As I had mentioned earlier, unlike the rest of the victims, was both young and murdered inside. Jack would also place a kidney on the shoulder. Forensic science had not yet existed, so there was no for sure way to arrest the being behind these murders. My last topic will be about the suspects thought to be the infamous killer. As mentioned throughout this speech, Jack the Ripper was never caught. However, the list of suspects grows more and more as time passes on. According to research by History.com, quote, the moniker, quote, Jack the Ripper, end quote, originates from a letter, which may have been a hoax, published at the time of the attacks, end quote. However, the people suspected to be the Ripper himself are the individuals known as Montague John Druitt, George Chapman, and James Maybrick. According to research by Gabe Paoletti, shortly before Druitt's death in 1888, the Ripper claimed his final victim, Mary Jane Kelly. Shortly after the rumors began to spread that the Ripper had drowned in the River Thames, end quote. Paoletti also mentions in his research about George Chapman that, quote, it is believed that he worked as a nurse or doctor's assistant in Warsaw until December 1886, and it is believed he moved to London in 1888, quote. In this speech, I have given a brief insight into the murders committed by Jack the Ripper and the surrounding aspects of these events. The Jack the Ripper murders are some of the most investigated cases till this day. These events have stayed in the front of people's minds and considered one of the earliest serial killers in the modern age. In more recent years, there has been a decrease in an activity this sinister. With this speech today, I hope to shed light on how we can help identify some of these behaviors presented by Jack in today's world. Thank you for your time.